Hi, I'm Jack Canfield, and I want to welcome you to this podcast where I'll be interviewing Alex Mandossian about a new product he's got called All Selling Aside. It's a podcast. It's incredible. I've watched a couple episodes of it, and I'm very impressed with it. And but first, I want to just ask you to, let us know where you're from, who you are, give us your name and where you're located, and that'll help us just know where you are and who's out there. And we'd like to know that there are people out there listening, and we'll be acknowledging you along the way. So let me introduce Alex. I want to start by saying that, since 1993, Alex has generated nearly $413 million in sales and profits for his marketing students, clients, and strategic alliance partners on 6 different continents. A best-selling author, Harvey McKay, calls him the Warren Buffett of online marketing. That's pretty cool. Because of his unique ability to make money for students and joint venture partners, regardless of their skill levels. Now, he shared the stage with diverse leaders such as Richard Branson, Larry King, Marianne Williamson, Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, Susie Orman, Mikhail Gorbachev, the Dalai Lama, 2 presidents, and yours truly, Jack Canfield. I'm impressed just to be in that lineup as well. His lifetime goal with me is to assist me in achieving my goal of training over 1 million trainers by the year 2030. And today he's going to talk about his time-tested process to enroll high-end clients without appearing pushy or risking the embarrassment of personal rejection. Well, I think we all can relate to that. If you're a trainer, a coach, or a consultant, I want you to lean forward and really get ready to learn and earn. So please help me welcome Alex Mandossian by typing in "Welcome Alex" in the chat so you can see that you're ready. So welcome.
Okay. All right, thank you. Listen, Jack, I was not trained in sales by Richard Bandler or John Grinder. They started the NLP movement. I was trained by a much higher authority, and it's not even God. It is Mother, Carol Mandossian. Carol would make most sales trainers start sucking them thumbs because she was really, really tough. And I remember growing up, she would say, "Don't ever lie to me." I said, "Mom, I never lie. Sometimes the truth changes." And so I only wish you could hear that introduction, because she still doesn't know what I do after 25 years in being in business, but it's good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here, Alex. Now, I'm really curious. You're doing a new podcast called All Selling Aside. What specific incident inspired you to create the ASA podcast? I'm really curious how you got into doing this.
Well, it was a warm summer afternoon in Montreal, Canada. It's a beautiful place to be in the summer unless you drive, because that's the only time they can do construction. But if you walk in a park, it's a beautiful place. And I'm in a mastermind room in 2016. I'm there with a very smart marketer, someone I want to introduce you to, Danny Einey, his wife, and about 15 other people who are masterminders. It's a high-end mastermind, a lot of high bandwidth thinkers. And we were talking about our unique abilities, and I never thought of selling being my unique ability. I've thought of marketing, but not so much selling, because that's just a transactional growth or outgrowth of marketing, right? And so I was just giving my principles to them and teaching them. I used a flip chart, and they just wanted to hear more. And this was something that I'd taken for granted, yet it was new to them. And these guys were smarter than I was. I felt like I was the dumbest person in the room. So the reason I decided to pursue what I was teaching as a way to teach others is that selling is not selling, really. Jeffrey Gitomer says, and I know he's a colleague, he's been in National Speakers Association and great author. He teaches selling. He said, people hate to be sold, but people love to buy. So if you can put people in a buying environment, like we did at One Day to Greatness, I mean, we did 4 of them. I understand we're going to do maybe a few more later this year. We weren't pushing them. We weren't manipulating. We were seeding through storytelling. And then that's the new selling. Now, I don't think it's the new selling. It's the old selling. I mean, Jesus did it. Muhammad did it. Buddha did it. Mahatma Gandhi did it. They would seed their principles through storytelling. And as a result, I thought, okay, why would this be relevant to a trainer, to a coach, a consultant, any service professional? You could be a dentist, chiropractor, financial services, lawn care professional. And what came up is, you don't know it, but Patty knows this. You were my first premium client. You're my first $25,000 client. I came to your house where your office is, and Lisa, your marketing director, and Patty, CEO, or I think she's president, or I don't know what her role is, but she's been with you for over 24 years. We did some flip charts, which I still have the screenshots to. I took it on my mobile phone, and that was the genesis, the origin of the Train the Trainer funnel, which ended up becoming very successful. You have nearly 4,000 trainers that have been certified, and it continues, to be a big success. That was also offered and seeded and story told and sold at the One Day to Greatness events, which also happened last year. So I've noticed that trainers especially, they love the result of the sale, but they hate the process of the sale. They're not good at it, And so on this masterclass, and I consider this a masterclass because it seems self-promotional, but if you're watching and you're still intending on staying here, I'm going to be seeding little action cards and action steps that you can take that I've pulled from my podcast. Now, this is a Facebook Live, but the podcast is what I'm selling by seeding and storytelling, and I'm going to walk the walk as I do it, and hopefully transfer some of that over to you so you can do it and change the way that you enroll people, because you deserve to generate more sales. Albert Einstein said nothing happens until something moves. I believe I know someone else said it, but nothing happens in business until something is sold. If you're a dentist, no person in the chair, there's nothing to drill. If you're a chiropractor, there's no adjustment if there's no patient on the table. And same with financial services. If there's no lawn care professional can help with that. And with a coach, a client, or a trainer, if you don't have that client that you've enrolled or someone who is with you has enrolled, then you can't really service them. So I've come up with a podcast after all these years. You know how they say the cobbler's kids' shoes have holes in them? Well, I'm the cobbler, and the cobbler's shoes have holes in them. I wrote a book back in 2006 called The Business Podcasting Bible with my good friend Paul Culligan. He's had many podcasts. He coaches podcasting. My first podcast comes out 12 years later on April 2nd. And the best part is there's no opt-in required. It's free. It's on iTunes, and it's how to get to the heart of 25 years of sales and marketing experience in 25 minutes chunks, week after week. So here's the action, okay, based on what I said. Many people who are watching now, if you're watching, you say, okay, what's seeding, what's storytelling? I'm not a very good storyteller, okay? Jack can tell stories. He's the king of storytelling, right, through Chicken Soup of the Soul. He and Mark developed that, and through Success Principles and any event you've ever been to. If you're a trainer of his, or if you've been to One Day to Greatness, the 5-day program, it used to be, I think, 14 days. He knows how to tell stories. Well, I've been teaching this for 6 years. I haven't seen it anywhere else. To tell a story, rather than saying, hey, let me share a story with you, you dive right in, kind of like what I did. And here is the 6-step storytelling formula. If you want to take a screenshot, you can take it. And of course, you can get the replay by simply coming back here, thanks to Facebook. Now, here it is. If you can see this card, step 1 is, when did this thing happen? When did it happen? Well, I told you, Montreal, warm summer, 2016. Where did it happen? Montreal, right? In a mastermind room. What happened? I was there teaching sales, and I thought it was no big deal. I took it for granted, but everyone else was astonished that, wow, that's a different approach. To me, different doesn't matter. Does it work? Well, it does work, because I mentioned that as well. Who was involved? Who was there? I told you, Danny Iney, and there was another guy. His name is Michael Lovich. He is you may not have heard of him, but he's the co-founder of Baby Bathwater Institute, which is a very famous digital marketing company. And he's the one who came up with the word all selling aside, because I kept telling people, it's not about selling. It's not about selling. He said, why don't you write a podcast, or why don't you do a podcast called All Selling Aside? So what a great name. I looked it up. It was available. So I registered the domain. This is 2016. And then 2 years later, that's how long it takes. I'm a slow learner with deep pockets. I decided to launch this thing. So that was step 4. Who was involved? How did it resolve? Well, it resolved by me realizing that seeding through storytelling is the new selling. That's how the whole thing resolved. That's the how. And then why is it relevant? Well, the why is last. Now, Simon Sinek, whom you know, has a book called Start With Why, not with storytelling. Because if you tell someone, here's why this is important, they're going to start pushing back. They're going to start resisting you. But if you dive into when it happened, where did it happen? What happened? Who was involved? How is it resolved? You know, the predicament that you were in, maybe. Like I said, I stumbled upon it. And then finally, why is it relevant to you? It's relevant if you're a coach, a trainer especially. That's why I'm here for Jack, because I'm scheming, I'm seeding, you know, I'm going to ethically influence Jack and his team for me to bolt on my seeding through storytelling conversion secrets program, but have it white labeled into the train the trainer process and online course, so that any trainer who's there and they can't get clients, all of a sudden selling becomes fun. Because some people don't even like selling the word. They talk about enrollment, or I like you to play with us. What does that mean? You know, you're selling them. Okay, that's what you're doing. So it can be fun. And if you use this formula and you end with why, then when, where, what, who, how, and why, it's as simple as that. And the more texture you bring, the more color you bring into it. Like I said, it was warm summer. I said, hey, it's not fun to be in Montreal in the summer if you're driving, but in the park, it's nice. It gets more interesting. You can learn this formula in 10 minutes. It could take you a lifetime to master, like the game of chess or Othello, but that's like everything else that Jack teaches. So I'm hoping that that first action card is useful, and you see that this is not just self-promotional. It's selling you that this is easier than you think it is. Jack, ready for the next question?
Well, first of all, I love what you did here. Is most people don't really know how to tell a story, and they do prologue. I'm going to tell you a story, and then they tell you why, and then you lose them in the process, like you said. So that really was a masterful class in storytelling. So good for you.
Thank you.
So here's one of the who questions. You developed this podcast, All Selling Aside. Who are the ideal listeners for this podcast?
Well, whether it's podcast or if you're a trainer, your ideal client, we call that the avatar. And an avatar is not the movie Avatar, but it's the ideal person that you're going after. And this is where most things break down. Most people think about, what's my message? Well, the message costs you money. It doesn't make you money. Or they'll ask, what media should I use? Facebook Live? Should I use LinkedIn? No, that costs you money and time. Ask about the only thing that's going to make you money. Who am I selling to? What are their aspirations? What are their affiliations? What attributes, make them up? What books do they read? If you showed me, you as you're watching right now, if you showed me the top 25 songs on your iPhone or Android that you enjoy and listen to all the time, I can tell you more about you than telling me how tall you are, what your ethnicity is, what your gender is, or where you're from. Jack's books behind him, when next time he comes on the screen, if I just look at those books and I know what they are because I've been there, I don't know, half a dozen times, I can tell more about Jack than, now, first of all, I'll say, hey, you got a lot of books. Which ones did you read? And he'll probably say all of them. But if I know which books they are, chances are 80 to 90% are nonfiction, because that's who Jack is. Now, if you get someone like a fiction writer, and I don't have to name names, they make more money than nonfiction writers because they sell more books, right? It's like Escape. Then I can tell you the type of fiction that person would write, what gets them interested. Let's say like John Steinbeck when he was living. He lived here in California. So with an avatar, what you want to do is name that person. So if maybe it's trainer Tammy and trainer Tommy. Tammy and Tommy. You have a male and female version. Or Coach Carla, who is mine, and Coach Carl. I like alliteration, so that's why I use that. There's nearly 4,000 certified coaches who could be watching this. I hope that they will. And I know that if you're watching, not all of you, I know some really good salespeople within Jack's certification program because they're good friends of mine. Scott Schilling is one. But you're great at servicing, but you're not so good, and I'll say flat out bad at selling. If you think you're great and you're not getting sales, then there's a blind spot there. So The ideal listener for my podcast is anyone who makes less than $250,000. Most make less than $100,000 US annually. They don't have any premium clients. What's a premium client? That's a high-end client that's worth maybe $10,000 or $25,000. I have $100,000 clients. Jack was my first 25K client. He doesn't even know it. So I'm glad that was like nearly 10 years ago. And the thing is, with most trainers, they know they have the cookie. They have the fulfillment approach. They have the coaching certification. They have the certificates. They have all that stuff. They have the cookie, but they sample it. They don't sell it. Now, Famous Amos on Wilshire Boulevard used to sample the cookie. Your former partner, Mark Victor Hansen, used to talk about that story. In fact, I was MC for him at one of the events you were at, and Famous Amos was actually there. He sampled them, but he brought them into the store. So that's seeding. But if you're doing free consultations and it's not turning into a sale, there's something that's wrong. And you can feed your family better. You can have nicer things. You can have more disposable income. You can have more learning. You can go to Jack's mastermind because the money won't be an issue if you learn how to seed instead of just sampling. And that's the big problem. So with your avatar, there's 3 fundamental elements to an avatar. And this is like a 1-day course by itself. Just always first who, then what. Remember that. First, who do I sell to? Then what is my message? And then third is, how do I get it to them? So market, message, then media, not the other way around. When people say I have a great idea, I go, no, I don't want to hear that. Who are you going to get to? Then I'll hear the great idea. So 3 fundamental avatar elements. Our mutual friend Bobby DePorter taught me there's a fun in fundamentals. So here it is. They're all A's. What are your avatars or ideal listener? If it's a podcast, ideal client, if you're a service professional, what are their aspirations? What are their affiliations? What clubs do they belong to? Okay. What are their attributes? Like what makes them tick? Like what attribute about them do they have? Are they parents? Are they divorced? You know, the toughest job in America is being a single mom with kids. That's an attribute. What's their affiliation? Well, they may be part of a mom's club. What's their aspiration? To be financially free. So these 3 A's are the elements that you could think about. And I hope you take that to heart. Aspirations, affiliations, attributes. I will give you an example of Coach Carla and what I've done and what I look at before I start writing any marketing communications. The second element, which is action card number 3, is what are the 3 counter avatar elements? This is kind of like the shadow. This is the opposite. You know, the elements I just showed you, aspirations, attributes, affiliations, that's what you move toward. Here's what they want to move away from. Their fears. What are their fears? What are their frustrations? What are their foibles? They have these little quirks. What have they messed up? I am not a tech person. I'm like Jack. I'm not big on technology, right? You got to show me 100 times. I hate users manuals. You just have to show me. So we have a production manager running this. Otherwise, I couldn't concentrate. So fears, frustrations, and foibles. And if you identify those, and you can do it in half an hour, again, it takes half an hour to do, but maybe it takes about a year to master. Then I'll show you an example that we have. No opt-in is required. This is Coach Carla. It's an example of what a good avatar should look like. And this is what I teach my $100,000 clients. So this is free info for 100K, no 100K. You go to allsellingaside.com. Now I'm seeding All Selling Aside. You see that? I'm seeding it. It's there, right? I'm shamelessly seeding it, but it's not being pushy. It's not trying to be tricky because I just told on myself. You can do the same thing, right? And so allsellingaside.com/avatar, you will get a PDF download of the avatar that I teach my Conversion Secrets clients. Nothing is for sale here that costs money, and there's no email opt-in. We're not going to hold you hostage, but if you go there, I'll show it to you one last time. You can type it in the chat, allsellingaside.com/avatar. You'll see a picture of Carla. Now, I went through 5-6 pictures. I surveyed my list. Jack, if you'll allow me, and we can talk to Russ and Lisa and Patty, we can do this survey with your list and also with your Facebook fan page, because you got over, you're going to have 2 million fans, I think, within the next year. You got over 1 million now. But you really focus in on who this avatar is. And so when you have that picture, every time your marketing department writes copy, they write to that person. Anytime you write a tweet or you do a Facebook post, you're writing to that person, and they have a certain play language and they have a certain appeal. Some things are less interesting to them than others. Some things are more interesting to them than others. So the ideal listener for my podcast is Coach Carla. She doesn't make 100K a year. Most of them don't. She doesn't have any high-end clients. She hates to sell, and she's not good at technology. So with all of that, she could be married or divorced, but she's really good at what she does, and she is not exceeding her potential. In fact, she is withholding from the world her gift, just like many trainers you have who are certified. They're withholding just because they're not good at a certain skill, or maybe they don't like doing it, so they offload it to somebody else, when they're really good seeders and really good storytellers. And if they just think of it a little differently, there's no one way to do it, but you have your own core stories, just like I started with a story here, then you can do it too. It is that easy. It's not get rich quick, but it's protecting your confidence, Jack. Back to you.
Because I'm not running the marketing department, I don't focus on that much, but I'm learning here. I love the 3 frustrations, the 3 Fs and the 3 As and the avatar. Cool. So you have a premise and a theme behind All Selling Aside. Talk about that.
I'm going to borrow it from Jeffrey Gitomer. Again, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And so the All Selling Aside premise is don't sell. Seed through storytelling instead. And the reason my eyes are darting down, by the way, is I'm reading notes so that I don't leave anything out. You don't mind, right? I like looking at the camera, but I like to look out. Now, I'll call a timeout. I'm seeding through storytelling in this masterclass, like cascades. What am I selling? A podcast. How much is it? It's free. Why would I do that? Because when people ask me, hey, what's your website? I no longer say it's marketingonline.com, because I sell there too soon. But if I send them to a podcast where there's no email opt-in required, iTunes, which has over 1 billion people on the platform, can ask you to subscribe. I get a rating and hopefully a 5-star review. Boom, another seed. See what I'm doing? That's what I want. I want reviews and ratings. And then if you subscribe, then iTunes sends you that podcast every week. And it's 25 years of my know-how in 25-minute chunks every single week. So when people say, what's your website? I'll say, just go to my podcast. It's on iTunes. Look it up, allsellingaside.com. You'll see half my face. And that's my better side. And that way, hopefully it gets your attention. And just listen to an episode. If you like what you hear, subscribe. If you like the second episode, then review it. Just give me a review. Write the review. It's like a declaration of, hey, this is why I liked it. And then rate it. And I hope I earn 5 stars. Now, one of the things that people in any service or any other type of business fail to do, and here's the action card, is action card number 5, we're moving along nice, is the Pareto, that's the 80-20 rule, principle of sales. Now, what most people do is they promote 80% of the time, shamelessly. They begin by promoting, they think their product is great because they think it's about the message, right? Well, remember the golden rule. Is that the way you want to be done unto? You want to figure out that you have a problem. They understand your problem, right? Seek first to understand and then be understood. That's one of Stephen, our former Covey, the older Covey, who's no longer with us. Maybe he's watching and listening, but that was one of his habits of the 7 habits of highly effective people. And other people have said it before him. Rather than promoting 80% of the time, as you may do and not even realize it, and then pre-qualify that they're the right candidate, and you do that 20%, why don't we flip it? And here's the premise. Pre-qualify 80% of the time. You do that with questions, with intakes, with assessments. I mean, like a doctor, right? You're pre-qualifying. He's going to diagnose you and say, hey, I think we got to take out your gallbladder. You say, what? I didn't even write anything down. You didn't even ask any questions. That's how most people sell. So you're not going to kill the patient. You're going to kill the relationship with the candidate. And so pre-qualify 80% of the time, promote 20%, and that reduces rejection. I won't even make the offer, Jack, until I know they're highly qualified. And I'll even ask them, is it okay if I show you the 3 options and the investments on how we can make change for you possible? And that's after going through a bunch of questions and answers in a discovery session. And when they say yes, my batting average so far, 4 out of 10 people will say yes to $100 to $30 or $12,000 offer. I don't have any 12,000 right now. I'm going to have some with Joe Vitale because we have a new joint venture together, but we have 30s and we have hundreds and more than you could imagine. And they're not difficult to service. And it's all through a process. And I'll show you that a little later in on the interview, because we're going to move very, very fast. Now, very quick thing. You will have 5 to 9 major objections to them saying yes to you. And an objection is a good thing. It's resistance, but that means they're interested, right? If they don't object, then they're not interested. So anticipate objections. So write those down. Now, I did this, and I'm wearing my Genius Network shirt here. Genius Network is a great mastermind I belong to. It's $25,000 a year. My second year I'm doing it. And Jack, you know Joe Polish, of course. And he asked me to sell his Genius Network to all the people who go to a big event every year in November. And we're doing the same thing this year. And so I assembled a breakfast panel, and we feed people, right? So when you feed breakfast, then that's building rapport, you're breaking bread. And then I'm the master of ceremonies. The whole thing takes an hour. And so if you have a mastermind, this is a great way to sell it. I talked to Patty and to Russ about this as well. So you have a breakfast panel at an event. They're live. You just fed them. They kind of feel obliged to listen. And so what I do is I talk about my story and why I was one of the first 20 people for Joe to invite into Genius Network in 2010, and I joined in 2017. And imagine all the money I could have made with the people who are there. Now, one of the reasons I didn't join is I said, Joe, why am I going to pay you $25K when some of the people in the network I've introduced you to? Well, that's an objection. Another one was, Joe, it's not the right time. My kids are young. Or another one is, I won't have time to attend the events. There's 3 events. I don't want to lose out on that. Or my business is not ideal. Or I know some of the people. I can just deal with them without having to pay the $25K. Now, these are all valid objections, but they weren't handled for me at the time. And then I tell that story. So I have 5 panelists, and the panelists are members, much longer than me. Some have been there forever, multi-millionaires, some of them. And each panelist has one objection to talk about. So what I do is I allow the panelists to fillet through storytelling and seeding each objection one by one by one. At the end of that hour, at the end of the day, $810,000 worth of sales for 1 hour of work. So that's how powerful it can be. Someone in that room, Roland Fraser, who's one of the smartest marketers I know. He's with the digital marketing group, Ryan Dice and Perry Belcher. He runs the War Room, $30,000 mastermind, which I just joined. He saw me do that. He said, can you do it for us? So I did it at the traffic and conversion event. It was a morning panel, same exact thing, only we had 2 sessions, and there were nearly 150 people in each. With Joe, there was about 70 people. And when all was said and done, I didn't do all the sales, but it was the spark that ignited it, nearly $3 million in sales in 2 sessions. Now, that's not me doing it. It's a process. And it's seeding through storytelling, which is the new selling. So I hope that story makes sense. It's not everyone can relate to that because they don't have masterminds, but it's the same principle at a very high end. And I really want to assist at no cost to you, maybe a trade, on enrolling more people into a mastermind, because it's counterintuitive, but we have a pretty good track record. I'm seeding you right now, Jack. Back to you.
No, I was just sitting here writing that we should be doing that at BTS to move people into trainer. We're going to need to talk more, Alex. All right. Anyway, you've been talking about how coaches and trainers and consultants hate to sell, and so how is the All Selling Aside podcast relevant or important to these people?
Well, like, relevance means it needs to work, and the biggest thing people are afraid of is rejection. I think that's my experience. Now, it's not the rejection that they fear, and that's not what causes the fear. I believe, and I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, although I'm a marketing therapist in many cases, but I just believe from my experience that anticipating the rejection causes a shift, and all of a sudden they say things and do things that they normally wouldn't do with a friend. and they end up looking like a pitch person. They look like, I'm going to call it pimping. They look like they're pimping their stuff versus pampering through the seeding and storytelling process. Now, I'm sorry if pimping is offensive to you, but that's what it looks like to the other person. So if you don't want to appear that way, then you might want to, or I invite you to consider the following. Now, whether your sale, whether your enrollment is through a webinar, which it might be, maybe one-to-one, face-to-face, or on video or phone, maybe on stage. We're on stage and we're asking people to run to the back of the room or walk to the back or skip to the back or crawl to the back and get something. Stage is another place. Or maybe it's a free consultation, right? Where you want to show them how you coach or how you train or give them a little bit of a insight, lift the hood. The big mistake people make is I'm not saying you, but you'll know if you're rushing the sale. That's what they do. They rush to the sale too soon. They haven't pre-qualified. They're selling hamburgers to vegetarians. And you'll know if you're rushing the sale by looking at your paycheck. Is it where you want it to be? Would you like to add a zero? And I'm not trying to be cute. Your paycheck will determine whether you're selling at a level that you're willing to sell. Who's one of the greatest salesmen in history? He was a man during the time of the birth of Christianity. I believe it was the 13th apostle who had no interest in Christianity in the beginning, Paul. And if you know Paul's story, he was the best promoter, man. I mean, if it weren't for Paul, Christianity wouldn't be as strong as it is today in the sheer number of people. He got the gospel out. Now, this is not about religion. It's about sales. Okay. I think he was a better salesperson than Jesus. He got the word out long after, the head man was no longer on earth. So think in those terms. You don't have to be Christian to think that Paul is a great salesperson. Look at his story as an allegory and see what he did. And that's what I did. And Buddha was a great salesperson. He would sell people differently. The advanced people would get sold differently. And the Buddhist text is different for the peasants versus the cognoscente, or the people who are a little bit more sophisticated of his day. And he taught for over 40 years, and he started late in life, as did Muhammad, right? So like over the age of 40. So the rushing to the sale leads to rejection because you don't have that bond. Unintentionally, your webinar, your one-on-one presentation, your stage presentation, it's going to look like a bait and switch if you rush to the sale. Now, your people won't tell you. They may just be courteous to you. But I'm telling you, if I watched it, I'd say, it looks like you're baiting and switching. If you say, I'm not trying to sell you something, you're baiting and switching. I am trying to sell you something. I'm trying to sell you to subscribe to All Selling Aside on iTunes. What does it cost? $0. What do I want? I want a review and a 5-star rating. That's what I'm selling here, right? And so now, if you decide to move on and do something else with me, we'll see. But that's your buying. I'm not selling. And by the way, I start with a story. Every single All Selling Aside episode starts with a story. That's a C. So rushing to the sale. Now, the purpose for any trainer, coach, or service professional is to ethically influence in getting new clients. And ethical influence is the key. That ethically influence, I think that's an adverb, not an adjective. I don't know. I wasn't that good in English, but I know how to use it, at least for selling. To ethically influence someone means you're being transparent, you're being genuine, you're being authentic, and they trust you. Trust is the lubricant to a transaction. And if you look relational versus transactional, people are going to say yes. How do you look relational? Pre-qualify 80% of the time, promote 20% of the time. How do you pre-qualify? Assessment, intake, questionnaire, application. Okay, it goes on and on. So here's the premium, this high-end client sales funnel. This is what I'm known for. So I teach people this, people smarter than me, and I won't tell you the millions that have been generated, but there's no rejection because all the people get weeded out. The tire kickers don't even get to the live human interaction, because all business is not B2B or B2C, it's H2H, human to human. So we let the robot doing all the pre-qualification, the autoresponders, the mobile texting, the applications, the scheduling, the deposit. We make them put down a deposit that's refundable so that they show up. That way we protect the confidence of the coach or the salesperson, right? And if they don't show up, we take the money and we tell them that. If they do show up and they don't qualify, we give them the money back. If they do qualify and they pay, then we give them a $150 rebate, because that's typically what the deposit is. It has been up to $500. So here are the steps to the funnel. Again, I can't show you the funnel, but I can tell you the steps. First, you have a pre-recorded event. Why pre-recorded? So that it's evergreen. It could be a webinar, it could be anything, but pre-recorded just to tease them and really seed the sell. Next, have an online intake. What's an intake? A doctor has an intake before he or she diagnoses you, so that there's some preliminary information. Next, they automatically schedule an appointment. There's plenty of apps online, Schedule Once, all kind of calendar apps. We use Schedule Once. You can look it up on Google. There's more than enough there. Then number 4 is a discovery session. Now that's diagnosis. They're checking the answers, whoever the person is, it could be a coach, checking the answers against the person now. Is there a gap? Are they aligned? What they said, is it really true? So that's what that's what the salesperson in this case is verifying. And then if it's verified, then the next step, it can happen in one session, or maybe they have to go to a second one like we do. We have a strategy session, and that's the prognosis. Okay, based on your experience, based on our experience, based on what you said, here's what our prognosis is, and what your future self would look like if you choose to accept this mission. And here are the costs. We give the costs up front. Usually it's good, better, best, and we always start with best. 100K, 30K, 12K, and it's like gulp. And then we don't care if they can pay or not. I had someone making $34,000 a year. I said, how are you going to pay me 100K? She said, I just got divorced. My husband left me over $2 million. I can afford 100K. I said, sold. I'm all in. So it's not what they're making. It's about their personal situation. I would have never found that out without the discovery session. So a premium client is someone over 10,000. For me, it's over someone 30,000. And if you use the 6 steps I have in my hand, a pre-recorded event to tease, an online intake, to get info, scheduling an appointment that they do automatically, not through a human, a discovery session, and I recommend a second session, which is strategy. Like, this is what we're going to do for you. So the first session is identifying point B. The second session is how to get from point A to point B. So the first session is selling hope, the emotion of hope. Hey, there is a point B. The second session is selling the emotion of confidence. Hey, this is how we our prognosis is, this is how you're going to get from point A to point B. I kid you not. I mean, they say it's supposed to be like 5 to 10%, 20% conversion. We get over 60% conversion by the time they get to the strategy session, because they are so highly qualified. And this is what I talk about in the podcast. Only doesn't cost anything. It's just, I figured, hey, I got 25 years of knowledge. There's a lot of know-how. Let me put it one episode at a time. So I have a year's worth of content, and it's being sprinkled and released 1 week at a time every Monday. Jack, back to you.
So talk about how our listeners can maximize their commitment by subscribing to the podcast.
Okay, to maximize the podcast is simple. And Leo, just keep Jack here so we go side by side. So Leo is my production manager. You don't see him, but we do. So rate and review the podcast. And what I do on my podcast, which is different, and I think some podcasters will pick it up, I don't want a review saying, okay, Alex is great, or I studied with Alex and I did his teleseminar secrets years ago. No, what I want is a takeaway. And you can only do one review on iTunes. So what I ask inside the podcast, I said, what is the biggest takeaway you got from this episode? Please give me a review. And then iTunes is going to ask you for a rating. And I think I deserve a 5 if you want to give me a 5. Now, you think it was a 4, then don't rate it yet. Wait till you get an episode where I get a 5. And then what happens is you're giving me a takeaway on I'm seeding 5, because that's all I want, right? But what I'm doing is I'm asking for a takeaway per episode, and that is a specific testimonial. It's not this catch-all water off a duck's back type of testimonial that I see all the time. My mom doesn't care what I do. She's stunned that anyone could watch me more than 5 minutes, right? But it's my mom, right? Other people are different. You know, I bring my mom to events. Jack, check this out. I brought her to Mark's events many times. She'd be in the back and they'd go try to hug her, say, Mrs. Mandossian, she's a big woman. So they put their arms around her and she's fun to hug. And she would look at them. And if they didn't have an order form, she would point to the back table and say, I don't give any hug for my son unless you have an order form in your hand. I don't know how many sales I got off of that. She was like my wing person there, my wing mom, right? So let's go to the main screen, Leo. What you see on the screen, let's show all the episodes, okay, on the screen. Thank you. So here is what it looks like, you know, for All Selling Aside. So there's this is me, you know, this is the half face I showed you. I didn't want to go color. I went sepia tone because that kind of stands out. So it's kind of like selling a book. What does the spine look like? That was my thing. But whether it's 5 famous influencer dropouts or Sam's dirty little secret, that's Sam Walton, the power of the Rockefeller effect, why indecision is the assassin of innovation, Galileo's famous 3.4 second pitch, 3 reasons why people buy, 3 reasons why people don't buy, why seeding is the new selling, confessions of a serial entrepreneur. You can't see the full titles here, but here's one thing. The very last title was my first one. It's reverse chronology. So the first one you see is the most recent, dropped the Monday before. The very last one, and today it's 9 because it's a brand new podcast. Remember, I'm the cobbler with holes in his shoes. It'll be, 50, in about a year's time, less than a year's time. I would go to Confessions of a Serial Entrepreneur. That's my backstory, or type, just click any one of them. I get to see which are the most effective, and that way I know the titles because I can see who's downloading the ones more than others. And so you'll notice I give like little catchy titles just to kind of, ensnare your intention. And so let's go back to me, Leo. So what I'd like you to do is just pick one All Selling Aside episode and just listen to it. Don't subscribe, don't rate it, don't review it. Just listen to it. It's less than 25 minutes. And then if you like it, subscribe to iTunes, review it. What are the takeaways you got from that episode? And then rate it with 5 stars. Now, let's say you didn't like that episode. It was a 4. Good. Please listen to another one until I get a 5-star rating. How's that? I mean, I can't be asking much. So that's the way is my self-serving benevolence for this interview, Jack. Back to you. We're getting to the end.
The format and the frequency. You want to say anything more about that?
The frequency, let's just stay right here, Leo. It's once a week, every Monday, and there's no email. There's no inbox, right? iTunes notifies you, hey, you have a new episode because you subscribed. That's it. Now, if you're saying, hey, I don't listen to podcasts, well, that's going to change. It's like saying, hey, I don't have a flat screen TV. Really? The smart TVs have podcasts now. Your car, I have a new car. Podcast, it's right there. So listen to podcasts because forget the CD, forget the pre-recording. If you have a podcast, iTunes with over 1 billion people on it, I don't teach a podcasting course anymore, but it's just a super simple way, and it's a more formal way, more formal than this, to get your message across. And so it's once a week, every Monday, super simple.
So, you've been talking about people that don't have high-end clients or not making over, 6-figure incomes. They don't enjoy selling. What results do you think, or could you promise, that people are going to get if they listen to your podcast?
Okay, so I don't know the results because in manifestation of anything, Jack, you know this, the results are none of our business. Usually there's an intention and there's a purpose. So the intention is like a thought and a feeling, and then there's a purpose, and then you take action, and then you get the result. And if you get the result you didn't want, you take a different action. So the only thing I know is to teach my manifestation process, which is this. And Leo, let's go full screen on this, please. So, because that way you can see the card. Thank you. So and you can see, like, I'm giving Leo directions because I want you to see the card versus being flat screen. I like to see Jack more, but I want you to see the card. So the 3-step process of manifestation for me is this. So let's say let's say that you would like to make $500,000 and you don't do it right now, right? Just throw out a number, right? Let's say 250,000. Let's say you want to make 250,000 and you don't do it right now. Forget how to do it. Forget how. Okay. That's an intention. I want to make $250,000. Great. So that's step one. Step one is the intention. Everything starts with intention. When Wayne Dyer was living, I mean, he made this famous through his book. The second step is purpose. Why do I want to make that 250? And, you know, if anyone has taught this better than anyone else I know on the planet, especially in dealing with your self-esteem, is the bigger your why, the easier the how. So the bigger your purpose, like, why am I doing it? It's not just to have good things. It's to build a school in Africa, or it's to get my kids to college, or it's to pay for private school, or it's to buy my spouse a home because he or she deserves it. You know, just a big why, and it could be multiple whys. And then third, this is where people stumble, is the how, strategy. What? Intention, why, purpose, and how, strategy. A massage therapist cannot make $1 million a year doing massage. If she nets $70 per massage, she can't net $1 million a year. She'd have to do over 14,500 massages. So what does she do? Does she change her intention? No. Does she change her purpose? No. She changes her strategy and builds massage envy, which exists, or mobile massage, which is an idea I've been throwing around for 3 years. No one's taking it. Have a van, 2 beds, curtain in between. Take the mobile massage with all the placards and the website on the side of the van. Take it to homes, and when people are coming home, they do a massage, and the whole neighborhood joins, kind of like beer at the river. You know, everyone just goes there. Or let's say your kitchen during the holidays. Where do they hang out? They don't hang out in the living room. They hang out at the kitchen because that's where the food is, right? So she changes her strategy. She's no longer a massage therapist. She's in the business of massage. She sells the franchise for multiple millions of dollars. So you want to change your strategy, and that's where people get stuck. They get stuck on the how. So here is a little process, and then we'll end it. When you're thinking about how can I make more money and do it faster, easier, and more effectively. So ask yourself, who is my ideal client, and what are top 2 incomes? What are the top 2 outcomes, they deserve? So who do I want to serve? This is going to rhyme. Who do I want to serve, and what are the top 2 outcomes they deserve? Like, what do they want? Not what do you want to give them? What do they want? That's the avatar, and you would know that. Next is, what's the monthly income, that I want to make 12 months from now? So let's say the monthly income you want to make 12 months from now is $20,000 a month. That may seem ridiculously high, or it may seem ridiculously low. That's 1/3 of my overhead. I know people, that's 1/100th of their overhead, who are good friends of mine, and take advice from me. I go, what are you taking advice from me? I said, well, I don't do this kind of thing, right? So it doesn't matter on income. It's the methodology is what really counts, so you can train other people. So what's the monthly income you want 12 months from now? That's point B. That's your point B. Monthly, not annual, monthly, because you have 12 chances to hit it. You could say weekly, and now you got 52 chances to hit it. People have too many goals, not enough celebration. So every time you hit it, your unconscious mind says, wow, I did it, and you get closer to it. Jack teaches that incredibly well. And then the next question is, what's my current income? Well, I want to make $20,000 a month. I'm currently making $5,000 a month. Okay. So I'm making $60,000 a year, and I want to make $240,000 a year. Great. So then the question is, what's the gap? Like, how much money am I losing as a result of not making that change? Now, this is actually a discovery session. This is what we actually do. Well, in this case, 5,000 and then 20,000. There's a $15,000 a month gap by not making the change necessary. Now, there's over 17 million millionaires in the world. Is it that difficult to be a millionaire? I mean, those are legitimate ones. Who knows, the illegitimate ones, right? That do things that are shady. So it's possible to make $250,000 in a year. So what changes do I have to make? So then the next question is, how have roadblocks gotten in my way from achieving point B? In other words, $20,000 a month. So let me repeat. Who are my ideal clients Okay, who do I want to serve, and what are the top 2 outcomes they deserve? Number 2, what's my monthly income I intend to have 12 months from now, and what am I currently making? So we work with 20,000 and 5,000. Then what's the gap? 15,000 a month. Great. How have the roadblocks, or how have any roadblocks gotten in the way to achieving my 12-month goal? Now, if you look at the roadblocks, like Dan Sullivan teaches, Jack, whom you know well, it's like, let's look at what's getting in the way first before we come up with strategy, because each roadblock is kind of a door, and each door has a lock, and each lock has a different key. Like Maxwell Smart, if you're old enough, right? The phone booth at the very end, all these doors are opening. I think he had 9 of them. So there's a special, like, that's roadblock number 1. That's roadblock number 2. That's the clap for roadblock number 3. They have a different strategy. So people come up with strategy before the problem or the roadblock, and they get into trouble because they're promoting their effort too soon before understanding what the problem is. And then the next question is why? Why haven't I made the change necessary to get to point B? This is where blind spots come in. This is where you may need a mentor. This is where you don't know that you don't know. And then the next question, and we ask our prospects this, when will you decide to make the change necessary to achieve point B and get unstuck from point A? You're stuck at point A, right? Well, I don't care why you're stuck as much as when will you decide to make the change necessary? How do I make the change? Well, that's strategy. That's the next step. Well, I don't know what changes to make. That's strategy. That's the next step. Well, I don't know of any way possible because I've never done it before. That's strategy. That's not intention, and that's not purpose. That's strategy where people get stuck. The how has killed more dreams than any other question I know. Why creates them? How kills them? And then if they decide to do it, now, then we say, well, we'll go on to a strategy session either in the next session, or we can do it now. And you can do this with yourself, and you find someone who's done it before you. That's why if you're a certified trainer with Jack, you've done it with him. If you've ever worked with me, you've done it with me. And that's what we need to do. I'm sorry we went 10 minutes over, Jack.
It's funny. I'm taking notes myself here, so I'm glad you went 10 minutes over because I learned more. So
Thanks.
Last question is, what's the next step you'd like people to take?
I'm so glad you asked, because I asked you to ask that question. Here it is, allsellingaside.com/iTunes. But Alex, I don't know what iTunes is. Well, Ivan Meisner just recently told me that. I said, just find out. Over 1.1 billion people do it. I don't care if it's broken. I have an Android phone. I don't have a smartphone. Go and go on your laptop. Okay, you can get to iTunes. Why iTunes? Because it is the 800-pound gorilla. You can get it elsewhere like Google Play and Stitcher, but they are pieces of lint in the belly button of humanity compared to iTunes. So allsellingaside.com/iTunes. Listen to one episode. If you think it's 5 stars, review it, rate it, subscribe, and I will be at your fingertips and ears every single Monday, and I won't even bother you with email. iTunes does all the work for me. And that is all, folks.
Thank you, Alex. That was great. It was a real masterclass. I went to iTunes last night. I listened to one of the podcasts for the first time. It was great. I didn't rate it. I'm going to go back and give it 5 stars. And I will listen to the others. They're great. So thank you for sharing so much. I'm sure we all got a lot. And go to iTunes and make sure you register, subscribe to the podcast. And I don't want to hear any more people out there saying, I don't know how to take my business to make it profitable, because this guy will teach you how. So again, thank you, Alex. And goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.